Welcome to another episode of In the Know, where we interview dignitaries, we have discussions with business leaders, subject experts, and residents so that you too can be in the know. We've brought back our special guest, Patrick Hagler, to continue discussing with us addiction and dependency. Patrick is a licensed marriage and family therapist. He's a licensed chemical dependency counselor, and he runs the Choices program for the Center for Recovery in Houston, Texas. Patrick, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
We'd like to continue where we left off on what the dangers are. Everybody just talks very nonchalantly across the country about, well, marijuana is legalized, so it must be okay, and so on and so forth. Tell us about the dangers in the formative years of our young ones on what that is doing to them or can do to them.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for having me back. And it's the Council on Recovery, which is a great resource for any of the things that we've been talking about, councilonrecovery.org. So marijuana, it's a very interesting topic that comes up frequently when I interact with students due to the fact that there's a lot going on now with legalization. There's a lot of discussion about the medicinal effects of it and what it does or it doesn't help. We got the CBD oil kind of craze that's going on right now. But it's a very, very, marijuana use for adolescents is a very different conversation than marijuana use for teenagers. Marijuana use for adolescents affects the development of the prefrontal cortex. It's that part of the brain that's responsible for executive functioning, mature decision making. That part's not fully formed in an adolescent. And marijuana use in particular is one of the worst things that a teen can use because of the amount of time that it stays in the system versus other substances. So marijuana use for teens is very, very damaging to the development of that part of the brain. And repeated use consistently over time can cause what we call arrested development, which basically means the child is arresting the development of their emotional quotient, or EQ as well. So you have an IQ, you have an EQ. IQ measures intelligence, EQ is your emotional intelligence. That's the part that gets stunted with marijuana use. And over time, what you can end up with is a kid whose body keeps growing, but they stay stunted, their maturity level stays stunted. So if you have a kid that's been using for 4 years, let's say from age 16 to age 20, what you end up having is a kid that grows up physically to be a 20-year-old, but maturity-wise, they stay 16. And you could imagine over the course of time how that can really impact someone's ability to function in the world if they're behind their peers emotionally.
Oh my goodness. And this is proven science, and this is something that everyone should be aware of. But how do you get the youngsters to understand that? What is the I guess as I was growing up, and I'm a little bit older than you are, but basically, we had Flash Gordon, and we had weird things like that, and we had the crazy marijuana movies or Reefer Madness and things like that that were supposed to scare the young people into not using those type of substances. Today, I think it's just a joke to watch any of those, but because there's so much more information available. How do we reach them? How do you convince these youngsters that they're going down the wrong path? And more importantly, how do we figure out that that's what they're doing in order to stop them?
Yeah, that's a great question. It starts with a conversation and figuring out what your child even thinks about it. And getting information again. The information that we have now is really, really solid based on functional MRI images that we can do now. So we can actually look inside a person's brain to see what it looks like when they're under the influence of a dopamine spike, which is a spike that we get when we do things that feel good. And it's very clear what happens to an adolescent brain, when that happens, the prefrontal cortex completely goes offline while that kid is under the effects of that substance. And over time, that can really, really be damaging to a child's ability to function like an adult. So I think first having a conversation with them, getting the information from a reputable site like a drugabuse.gov, counselonrecovery.org, drugfree.org. Those are all good websites that have empirically based research. It's not anecdotal information like a lot of other sites, .com sites that you might see some anecdotal information. But to really understand that the adolescent brain is very different from the adult brain. So it's not to say that there may not be some medicinal benefits from marijuana. There very well may be. We don't. The evidence for that also is anecdotal. We don't know for sure. But what we do know for sure is that chronic marijuana use by teenagers, and when I say chronic, I mean once a week, twice a week. That's even once a week marijuana smoking can have long-term arrested development effects on our kids' brains. And that information, I don't know that a lot of kids know, outside of St. Thomas, I teach it there, but it's really important information for kids to know. So parents need to know it first in order to have the conversation about it.
Oh, well, let me ask you this. What, I'm not asking you to give an age permission, but after what age has that developmental shutdown not at risk?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. What I tell my kids sort of jokingly is that if you want to smoke marijuana, if you want to experiment with marijuana, great. Do it after age 25. You can smoke a forest of marijuana after 25 if you want to, but wait until then. What I don't tell them is that they're actually probably not going to do that if they wait until 25, because they've allowed their prefrontal cortex to develop and they'll be making good decisions. But they seem to like to hear that. But after 25, so this period of brain development, prefrontal cortex brain development, the part of the brain that's going to allow our kids to be well-adjusted members of society, that stops growing at 25. So we have from about age 11 to age 25, where we have this massive period of brain growth, which is that prefrontal cortex development. At 25, you've got what you've got, and for the rest of your life, it's going to be sort of incremental growth based on your experience. It's not going to be this massive growth that our kids are having right now. So after 25, the impact of substance use on the brain is much, much, much lower than for someone under 25, where that part of the brain is still growing and it's very susceptible to changes in dopamine levels.
Patrick, is it right to say that because of the legalization of marijuana in many states across the nation, that we're now in a situation where our youth thinks it's okay? I mean, I assume there's requirements. You have to be 18 or 21, like drinking. I don't really know. You would probably be able to share that with me. But they say, well, we're allowed to, so there must be nothing wrong with it. How do we?
Yes.
How do we fight that one?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. And I've seen that myself, that there's an attitude amongst kids that, well, since it's legal in Oregon and Colorado and all these other places, that it's safe. Again, I would have the parents go back to the conversation about safe for who? Safer for an adult whose brain is already formed, and the effects for them would be much less than for the child. And again, the child, if they're very good litigators, so they'll say, well, Mom, look at this website and this website and this website that points to the fact that it's okay. It helps with this and this and this and this. Don't fall for that, because you don't know where that information is coming from. The information that we do know is that it's really harmful for that developing brain. And if that kid develops a habit of using marijuana consistently over this developing period, they run the risk of being markedly behind their peers in terms of executive functioning. And executive functioning, what is that? Excuse me, that's, the ability to have impulse control, the ability to problem solve, to decision make, the ability to use judgment based on your past experiences, being able to emotionally regulate, being able to have frustration tolerance, the ability to feel empathy. All these things are executive functioning skills that when kids engage in high-risk behaviors, including marijuana, they don't grow. And that's not what we want for our kids. So delay is always the best way to go. And if you can wait till 25, great. But I would say at least wait until 21. Allow yourself to get that full or close to full brain development, so that when you go out into the world, you're not a kid in an adult's body. And that's really what can happen. You're going to end up being an adult with the mindset and the outlook on the world of a kid, and that can create a lot of problems for an adult.
Wow. That's really interesting, because I guess it explains, you talk about the stoner kids or the stoned people, and they just seem to be slower or less connected or less whatever it may be. And you're saying it's because their development has slowed down or been inhibited. So it's not just the effect of what they're feeling right that second on the marijuana, so to speak, but they've already caused this damage to themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bet anybody out there can think of a family gathering or anyone in their immediate family, aunts or uncles, cousins, or, there's always that one guy that's a grown man, 40, 50, 60 years old, but seems to get along better with the teenagers, very goofy, kind of has this young sort of, personality, maybe has been through a few marriages, maybe has been through a few jobs. That guy is, I can guarantee you, is someone that started using probably alcohol very early, and then maybe marijuana, maybe other things, but that person stunted their emotional quotient, their EQ early on, and they never recovered from that. So what you end up seeing is someone that's a grown man, kind of acts like a kid, makes decisions like a kid. And that doesn't bode well for success as an adult when you have the mental perspective of a kid.
How terribly sad. So Patrick, where can someone go for information and help? I mean, you named a few of the places, and I'd like to put them across the screen now. Tell us again, where are some of the places that people can go to get information, to get help? And we would encourage you, moms and dads and aunts and uncles and everyone, to have these conversations now that you're in close, tight quarters with your immediate family. And take advantage of this time that we all have to just sort of sit quietly and see if we can make a difference. So tell us, please, Patrick, where would we go for these different
Yes. So like the ones I mentioned, I'll give you three that are just very good resources for really good, true information. So counselonrecovery.org. There's all kinds of stuff on there on marijuana, vaping, and all sorts of other things as well. You can go to drugabuse.gov and drugfree.org. Those are all three really good websites where you can get good information that you can talk about with your kids. I mean, it's a discussion, and to be able to find out what your kids' attitudes are towards these things, and have a discussion, and that may even open up the opportunity for a parent to kind of share their own personal experience on maybe what they've learned in their time, and that can be really impactful for a kid to be able to have that sort of an honest conversation with their parent, as opposed to the just say no because I said so. there's nothing wrong with that, but I don't know if that works so well with kids today, with all the information that they have available. A little bit more honest and open engagement, I think, can really go a long way with our kids.
Well, that's very valuable and very powerful commentary and suggestion for all of us. And I guess it's what you get to practice on a daily basis in your work. And I'm sure that the same thing that you are able to practice at home with your children. Patrick, thank you so much for sharing this information. I would like to also talk further with you about vaping and about some of the other addictions, and maybe bring you back for that real soon. Patrick, once again, thank you for being our guest here in the Know and bringing us all this valuable information.
Thank you for having me. It's been great, and I look forward to speaking with you again. Thanks, Hank.
So, you are again in the know. Tune in, and we'll bring you more information. See you soon. I'm Hank Van Joslin.